The man stood in the narrow aisle of the store longer than most people did. Not because he was confused, but because he was careful. Every item in his hands had weight beyond its price. A pack of notebooks, a small box of pencils, a folder with bright colors that made his daughter smile. He held them close to his chest, then looked down at the price tag again, just to be sure. He had already walked through the food section before coming here. He knew what was there. He also knew what he would not buy. His stomach had been empty since early morning, but hunger had become something he understood how to ignore. It was easier now than it used to be. Hunger came and went, but school only started once a year, and his daughter only had one chance to walk into her classroom feeling prepared. Not embarrassed, not different from the other kids. His daughter stood beside him, swinging her legs slightly as she sat on the edge of the cart. She was small for her age, with hair that never stayed neat for long. She held a ruler in her hands like it was something special. "Daddy, this one has stars," she said softly, turning it over. He smiled at her, a real smile, even though his mind was busy counting numbers. "That's a good one," he said. "Stars are lucky." She grinned back, trusting him completely. That trust sat heavy on his heart, but it also gave him strength. At the end of the aisle, a woman stood pretending to look at greeting cards. She wasn't really reading them. Her eyes kept drifting back to the man and his daughter. She noticed the way he checked prices twice, the way he picked up a cheaper notebook, then hesitated before putting it back and choosing the one his daughter liked. She noticed his clothes too, clean but worn, shoes that had seen many years. The man moved to the checkout line. He placed the school supplies carefully on the counter, lining them up like they mattered. The cashier scanned each item. The total appeared on the screen. The man took a quiet breath and reached into his wallet. He pulled out a few bills, smoothed them with his thumb, and counted slowly. The woman in line behind them could see his hands shake just a little. "Daddy," the girl said, lowering her voice, "can we get a snack?" The man knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Not today," he said gently. "We'll eat at home." She nodded without arguing. She had learned early not to ask twice. The cashier waited patiently. The man handed over the money. It was exact. No extra. No coins left behind. When the receipt printed, he folded it neatly and placed it in his pocket like it was something important. As they turned to leave, the woman noticed something small but telling. The man glanced once more toward the food section. Just a quick look. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked out with his daughter, holding her hand. Outside, the sun was bright and the parking lot was warm. The man adjusted the bag on his arm, making sure nothing fell out. His daughter skipped beside him, talking about school, about how she wanted to show her teacher her new supplies. He listened carefully, responding when needed, laughing when she laughed. Anyone watching might think everything was fine, but inside, his thoughts were heavy. He remembered a time when buying school supplies did not require this kind of planning. A time when there were two adults sharing the weight of life. That time felt far away now, like something from another world. Life had changed quickly. One day, he was part of a family that felt complete. The next, he was learning how to do everything alone. Work, cooking, homework, bedtime stories. He learned how to braid hair badly, how to pack lunches with whatever was left, how to pretend he wasn't tired. Most nights, after his daughter fell asleep, he sat at the small kitchen table with bills spread out in front of him. He always paid rent first, utilities next. Anything left went toward his daughter. His needs were always last. Sometimes they didn't make the list at all. Skipping meals wasn't something he talked about. It wasn't something he complained about. It was simply a choice he made when the numbers didn't work out. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself it would get better. As they reached the bus stop, the woman from the store appeared a short distance away. She hadn't planned to follow them. At least, that's what she told herself. But her feet had moved without much thought. Something about the man stayed with her. The quiet way he carried himself. The dignity in how he handled his situation. She watched as he lifted his daughter onto the bus, handing her the bag of supplies like it was something precious. He crouched down again and said something that made her laugh. Then the bus doors closed. The man stood there for a moment, watching the bus pull away. Only when it was gone did his shoulders drop slightly. The day wasn't over for him. It never really was. He walked toward home alone. The woman stayed behind, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to intrude. She didn't know his story, not fully. But she knew enough to feel something stir inside her. A mix of sadness, respect, and a quiet anger at how hard life could be for people who are doing their best. The man's steps were slow but steady. Each step felt heavier, now that he no longer had to be strong in front of his daughter. His stomach reminded him that it was empty. He ignored it, the same way he always did. As he walked, he thought about dinner. He planned to tell his daughter he had eaten earlier. He would make her something simple. She would eat, and that would be enough for him. Back at the store, the woman stood still for a long moment. People moved around her, carts rolling, doors opening and closing. But her mind was somewhere else. She thought about the look in the man's eyes when he counted his money. About the way his daughter trusted him without question. She wondered how many people like him passed through that store every day. How many quiet sacrifices went unnoticed. How many parents skipped meals so their children wouldn't feel left behind. The thought stayed with her long after she got into her car. She didn't know yet that this small moment would matter, that seeing something so ordinary would change how she looked at the world. For now, all she knew was that she had witnessed something real, something honest, a father choosing his child over himself, without drama, without praise. And somewhere down the road, that quiet sacrifice would not remain unseen. The woman drove slowly away from the store, but her mind did not follow the road. She kept thinking about the man she had seen, about the small girl clinging to his hand, and about the quiet determination in his eyes. Most people in her life moved too quickly to notice such moments. But she noticed. Something about him stayed with her, like a faint echo she couldn't ignore. Her thoughts drifted to her own life. She had her struggles, yes, but nothing like what she had just witnessed. She thought about how easily people could take for granted the simple things: a full pantry, a warm meal, a backpack ready for school. She realized that for some, those things were carefully measured, sacrificed for, and sometimes impossible. And yet, he carried it all with quiet dignity. No complaints, no excuses, only love. She remembered the way he counted his money slowly, making sure every coin was right. She remembered the small smile he gave his daughter, and the gentle way he told her they couldn't buy a snack today. That smile lingered in her mind. It was soft, protective, and full of love. It reminded her of what real care looked like, beyond words and beyond appearances. She replayed every little detail from the store, as if trying to memorize them. His worn shoes, the way he straightened the backpack when it slipped from his arm, the careful way he held his daughter's hand as they walked. There was something about that kind of quiet love, the kind that didn't need applause. That moved her more than any grand gesture ever could. Her eyes drifted to the rearview mirror, and she realized that without thinking, she had slowed down again. She had been following him at a distance, careful not to be seen, letting him disappear into the flow of the city. She felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. She hadn't meant to follow him, she told herself. Not really. But her feet and her car had made the choice before her mind had even caught up. The streets were busy, people moving in and out of shops, cars honking, the usual chaos. And yet, she felt as if she had entered a quiet world, one apart from the noise. A world where small acts of courage and sacrifice carried more weight than wealth or status. She found herself parked near his neighborhood, keeping a careful distance. The houses were modest, neat in their own way, and she could see him walking slowly toward one. The small girl skipped beside him, carrying the backpack full of supplies. She watched as he opened the door, entered first, then helped his daughter inside, making sure she didn't drop anything. Through the window, she could see him putting the bags on the kitchen table. She imagined him thinking through the next steps, what to cook, what he could manage with what they had. And she imagined the hunger gnawing at him quietly, a part of life he had learned to carry without burdening his child. She thought about the choices he made every day, the long hours at work, the sacrifices he did not speak about, the silent planning that kept his daughter's world intact. She realized that these moments, these small but profound acts, rarely reached the eyes of the wider world. No one cheered for him. No one wrote about him. But he kept going, quietly, faithfully. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as the wind picked up. She had no plan, no idea of what she could do. But she felt compelled to do something, to help somehow. Something about seeing him so devoted, so careful. Elle, with every decision, had stirred a deep urge in her. She remembered how he had held that backpack like it was more than just a bag of school supplies. And in that moment, she understood something simple and true. Love often shows itself in quiet, practical ways. It doesn't always roar. It doesn't always ask for recognition. It just is. And sometimes it requires sacrifice. She watched him now, moving to the small refrigerator, pulling out ingredients for a simple dinner. Maybe some eggs, a few vegetables, rice if they were lucky. She noticed the way he moved slowly but carefully, like every choice mattered. Every movement carried purpose. Every decision was for her. She thought about her own life again. She thought about the people who had helped her when she needed it, the kindnesses she had received that changed her in ways big and small. And she realized that perhaps she had the chance to do the same for someone else. Not for recognition, not for applause, not to be praised. Simply because it was the right thing to do. As she continued to watch, she felt something shift inside her. She wanted to be part of his world in some way, not intrusively. Not in a way that would embarrass him or make him feel indebted, but quietly, gently, like a ripple of care that could reach him without making him feel anything but support. She thought about the small girl, the one who laughed when her father made a joke about pencils being magical. She thought about how the child might not know the struggle behind the meal her father skipped. The money counted twice, the hours worked just to ensure she felt safe and prepared. She thought about how rare it was to see love expressed with such care, patience, and quiet strength. Time passed slowly, and she remained parked at a distance, unsure of how long she had been there. She noticed the way he carried himself, tall and careful, even when tired. The way he smiled at his daughter when she asked questions, answered politely, or just needed reassurance. There was no drama in his actions, no exaggeration, only the steady rhythm of care and responsibility. And yet she knew that behind the calm there was exhaustion, the kind that comes not just from physical work, but from mental work, the constant weighing of choices, the balancing of needs, the endless planning that keeps a small life afloat. She understood, in that moment, that he was not superhuman. He was just a man doing everything he could to give his child what she needed. She remembered how he had smiled at the cashier, how polite he had been, how gentle he had been with his daughter. She thought about the small, unnoticed courage it took to face the world every day, knowing that the little, Victories like buying school supplies were hard won. She felt a deep admiration, mixed with a quiet sadness for the struggles that went unseen. Her mind wandered back to the store again. She thought about how easy it would have been for anyone to judge him, how some people might have assumed carelessness, poor planning, or irresponsibility. But she had seen the truth behind the surface. She had seen the planning, the love, the sacrifice. And it had touched something deep in her Dot as evening approached. The sky turning soft shades of orange and pink, she realized she needed to leave. She couldn't linger forever. But she also couldn't ignore what she had seen. She couldn't forget the man who skipped a meal so his daughter could have what she needed for school. The image stayed with her, the gentle way he treated his child, the careful calculation of money, the quiet dignity with which he lived his life. Driving home, she thought about what she could do. She didn't have answers yet. She didn't know if she would ever have the chance to speak to him, to help, or even to thank him. But she knew one thing. She could not let this moment pass unnoticed. She could not let this quiet sacrifice vanish into the background of life. She arrived at her apartment and sat in her car for a long time, staring at the dashboard. Her mind replayed the scene over and over: the laughter of the child, the careful steps of the father, the way he held himself with pride even in hardship. She thought about the ways in which ordinary people like him show extraordinary love every day. And she realized that sometimes being present, noticing, and holding that image in her mind was the first step toward change. She pulled her coat tighter, thinking again about the tiny details she had noticed, the way he counted his money, the way he made small jokes to make his daughter laugh, the way he walked home slowly, deliberately, carrying both a bag of supplies and the invisible weight of responsibility. Each small detail had left a mark on her. Each small act of care told a story of resilience, sacrifice, and quiet heroism that, by the time she walked into her apartment, she had made a decision in her heart. She did not yet know how she would act, or when. She did not know if he would accept help, or if he would even want it. But she knew she could not ignore what she had witnessed. She had seen real life, real courage, and real love in its simplest and most profound form. And she had a responsibility not to intervene recklessly, but to be thoughtful, to be careful, and to act in a way that honored what she had seen. That night, she went to bed with images of a small apartment, a backpack of school supplies, and a father who put his child's needs before his own. She thought about how few people saw such acts of love. She thought about the quiet, unseen work of parents everywhere, the sacrifices that were made without thanks or recognition, and the courage it took to keep moving forward. And in the quiet darkness, she made a promise to herself. She would not forget. She would find a way to help. She would find a way to acknowledge the dignity and love she had witnessed. She did not yet know how, but she would try. Because some stories, even when no one is watching, are too important to let pass unnoticed. She drifted to sleep. The image of the small girl smiling in the store, the father counting his money, and the quiet determination of a man who put love first, running through her mind. It was a story she would carry with her, one that would change her quietly, profoundly, and forever. The man's apartment was small, but it was a world he had built for his daughter. Every corner, every shelf, told a story of careful planning, hard work, and love that required no explanation. The walls were plain, painted in neutral colors, but there were traces of life everywhere. A small drawing taped to the refrigerator, a tiny handmade decoration hanging from a hook, and a little chair pulled up to the kitchen table, just her size. He carried the bag of school supplies to the table with a sense of purpose. Each item was unwrapped, set down carefully, and arranged in a way that made them seem more important than they were. The girl watched, wide-eyed, as he opened the backpack and placed the notebooks, pencils, and folders inside. She ran her fingers over the edges, feeling the textures, the bright colors. "Look, Daddy," she said, holding up a notebook with a shiny cover. "It's perfect." He smiled, crouching down to her level. "Yes, it is," he said. "You'll do great things with it." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything he had done to get them. She couldn't know yet, how many times he had skipped meals or counted coins just to make this moment happen. She only knew that he had given her something special, and that was enough. After setting the supplies on the table, he turned to the kitchen. The ingredients for dinner were few, but he made them work. A pot of rice, a few vegetables chopped into small pieces, and a simple sauce he had learned to make stretch with what he had. He moved quietly, deliberately, making sure his daughter had a chair pulled close and a small plate ready. She climbed up and watched him, fascinated. "Can I help?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "Sure, you can stir the sauce," he said, handing her a wooden spoon. She stirred carefully, and he guided her hands when needed. Her small arms worked hard, and he smiled, letting her feel useful, letting her feel capable. As they sat down to eat, he made sure she had more on her plate than he did. His own portion was small, just enough to keep him going until the next meal. Hunger pressed at him, sharp and familiar, but he ignored it. He knew she needed to eat first. She needed to feel full and happy and ready for school tomorrow. That was always more important. After dinner, she helped clear the table, putting dishes in the sink while he washed them. The apartment was quiet, except for the small clinking of dishes and the occasional laugh or question from her. He answered each one patiently, even when he felt tired. He knew that these moments mattered more than anything else. The way he spoke, the way he listened, the way he treated her as if her small world was the only world that existed. Those were the things that would stay with her long after she grew up. Once the dishes were done, he helped her pack her school bag. He checked to make sure each pencil was sharp, each notebook in the right place. He looked at her carefully, making sure she had her lunch prepared, her uniform neat, and her shoes tied. She leaned against him for a moment, and he felt the small weight of her trust on his chest. That trust was precious. He would never let it break. She went to bed early that night, exhausted from the day, but content. He watched her for a moment, noticing the small rise and fall of her chest as she slept. He reached out, straightened the blanket over her, and whispered softly, "I love you." The words were simple, but they carried everything he felt. Everything he did, every choice he made, every sacrifice, it all came from that place of love. After she fell asleep, he sat at the small kitchen table. Bills lay spread out before him. The total for the school supplies still lingered in his mind, along with the groceries he had to buy, the rent he had to pay, and the little things that seemed small but added up to an impossible mountain of responsibility. He rubbed his tired eyes and leaned back in his chair. Hunger pressed at him again, but he ignored it. He poured himself a small cup of water instead. It would have to be enough for now. He thought about tomorrow work, school drop-off, the errands he would run, the things he would need to stretch to make last. Every day was a careful calculation, a constant balancing act between what was necessary and what could wait. He thought about the moment in the store, the careful way he had chosen each item for his daughter. That moment, he realized, was more than just a shopping trip. It was a statement. It was his way of saying, without words, that she mattered above everything else, that she deserved to feel ready, confident, and loved, that nothing, not hunger, not exhaustion, not worry, would stop him from giving her that. Meanwhile, the woman who had followed him was sitting in her own apartment, thinking about what she had seen. She tried to imagine what it would be like to live with such quiet responsibility, to make choices every day that placed another person above herself. She thought about the exhaustion, the small victories, and the invisible weight he carried. She realized that people like him were everywhere, doing extraordinary things in silence. And she felt a deep urge to do something, not to intrude, but to support, to ease some of that burden. She kept returning in her mind to the image of him at the table with his daughter. The careful arrangement of school supplies, the small gestures of love, the way he put her needs first. She thought about the way the world often overlooks such moments, how rare it was to truly see them, and how powerful it felt to witness something so genuine. Over the next few days, she found herself thinking about him constantly. She drove past the store again, wondering if she would see them. She imagined small ways she could help, maybe groceries, maybe extra school supplies, maybe simply a kind word, but she worried about intruding. She did not want to embarrass him or make him feel uncomfortable. She wanted to honor his dignity while still offering support. Meanwhile, life for the man continued as usual. Work was demanding, errands piled up, and responsibilities never paused. He continued to wake early, go to work, return home, and manage the small apartment with care. He noticed small improvements in his daughter, how she took pride in her supplies, how she prepared for school on her own, how she smiled more confidently. Those small victories felt like treasures to him. He also noticed his own fatigue. Some nights, after his daughter slept, he would sit quietly and let the weight of it all settle on his shoulders. He did not complain. He did not call attention to it. But it was there, a constant companion, reminding him of the cost of love, responsibility, and sacrifice. One afternoon, after work, he returned home to find a small bag at his doorstep. There was no note, no name. Inside, he found a few simple groceries: rice, vegetables, a small loaf of bread, and some milk. He looked around, puzzled, then slowly realized that someone had left it for him. His first thought was worry. Had he offended someone, made a mistake, or caused trouble? But then he saw that everything was carefully chosen, as if the person who left it had paid attention to what he needed, without asking for anything in return. He placed the groceries on the counter, unsure how to feel. He was not used to receiving help, but he was not embarrassed either. He felt gratitude, yes, but also a quiet wonder. Someone had noticed him, noticed his struggles, and chosen to act in kindness. His daughter came home from school that day, backpack bouncing against her small back. She ran into the apartment, talking about her day, showing off her notebooks, asking questions about her homework. He smiled, listening, guiding, helping, and supporting. He did not mention the groceries, not yet. He wanted the moment to be hers, the ordinary joy of coming home, eating, and learning. Later, as they sat down to dinner, he finally told her about the bag of groceries. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she smiled brightly. "Someone wanted to help us?" she asked. He nodded, carefully choosing his words. "Yes," he said. "Someone noticed what we needed and decided to help. Sometimes people do that. Sometimes kindness comes quietly, without anyone expecting it." She thought for a moment, then looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Maybe we can help someone else one day too," she said. He nodded again, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Yes, maybe we can," he said. He realized then that this simple act of kindness had more impact than he could have imagined. Not just on him, but on his daughter, on how she understood the world, and on how he understood it too. That night, as they went to bed, he felt a sense of quiet hope. The apartment still bore the signs of struggle, small cracks in the wall, worn furniture, and the lingering worry of bills, but it also carried a new sense of connection. He understood that kindness could arrive in unexpected ways, and that sometimes Even the smallest acts could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could measure. He sat for a while, reflecting on everything. The sacrifices, the quiet work, the small victories, and now the unexpected support. He realized that life was not just about surviving, but about noticing, responding, and sharing what one could. Even when resources were limited, the heart could still reach outward, and the heart could still accept what others offered. And somewhere, not far away, the woman who had watched him from the store smiled quietly to herself, knowing she had done the right thing, even in the smallest way. She didn't yet know the full impact of her choice, but she trusted that it would matter. She trusted that it would reach him in the way she hoped, without shame, without obligation, but with dignity and care. In that quiet evening, both of them, in their separate spaces, felt a subtle shift. A story of sacrifice, observation, and unseen care was beginning to unfold gently, quietly, and profoundly. It was a story that would continue, one day at a time, built on love, resilience, and the courage to notice what others often missed. The next morning, the man woke up earlier than usual. His daughter was still asleep, curled up under her blanket, small and peaceful. He watched her for a moment, noticing how the sunlight hit her hair and the gentle rise and fall of her chest. Every day, he reminded himself that he had to do everything he could to make her feel safe and cared for. He quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake her, and began his morning routine. He prepared breakfast, a small meal, nothing fancy, just enough to fill her stomach before school. She stirred as he set a plate in front of her, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Good morning, Daddy," she said softly, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning," he replied, smiling. "Eat up. We have a busy day ahead." As she ate, he packed her lunch and checked her backpack. He made sure her notebooks were in order, pencils sharpened, and that she had everything she would need. She chattered happily about what she would do at school, and he listened, nodding and asking questions, encouraging her excitement. Once she was ready, he walked her to the bus stop. She skipped ahead, backpack bouncing, and he followed at a steady pace, careful to keep up. As the bus approached, she waved to him, and he waved back, feeling that familiar pang of love and responsibility. He watched until the bus disappeared, then turned toward his small apartment, ready to face the day's work. Later that morning, the woman drove past the neighborhood again. She hadn't planned it, but she found herself drawn there, thinking about the man and his daughter. She thought about the groceries she had left at his door, and how small her gesture had seemed, yet she hoped it had helped. Something told her that it wasn't enough, that he might still be struggling in ways she couldn't see. She parked a little distance away and watched. From across the street, she could see him moving around the apartment, carrying laundry, tidying up, and preparing for the day. He was ordinary in appearance, yet everything he did seemed intentional, careful, and full of purpose. She noticed the way he paused to straighten something on the table, the way he looked around the apartment as if checking that everything was in order. She realized that this man was extraordinary in ways the world often missed. Ordinary people doing ordinary things, quietly creating a life of love and responsibility. She felt a deep sense of respect, but also a growing urgency. She wanted to help more directly, to offer support in a way that he could accept without losing dignity. She wanted to acknowledge his efforts, to let him know that someone had truly seen him. For the next few days, she thought carefully about how to approach him. She didn't want to frighten him, embarrass him, or make him feel like charity was being forced upon him. She wanted to be thoughtful, considerate, and respectful. She made a plan to speak to him directly, in a way that would honor his pride and the quiet strength she had witnessed. On a warm afternoon, she finally decided to act. She walked up to his apartment door and knocked lightly, pausing to listen. She could hear movement inside, then footsteps approaching. He opened the door, and she offered a small, polite smile. "Hello," she said softly. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to talk to you for a moment." He looked at her carefully, surprised. "Yes," he said, cautious but calm. He noticed nothing about her appearance suggested judgment or expectation, only kindness. "My name is not important," she said, keeping her voice gentle. I noticed you in the store the other day. You were buying school supplies for your daughter." She paused, searching for the right words. "I wanted you to know that I saw what you were doing. I saw how carefully you thought about it. And I wanted to help if I could." He blinked, a flicker of confusion passing over his face. You saw me?" he asked. His voice was quiet, hesitant. He wasn't sure how to respond. People didn't usually notice the small things he did. They didn't see the hours, the sacrifice, or the careful thought he put into every choice. "Yes," she said. "I did, and I wanted to do something for you, if you'll let me. Not because you need pity, but because I think what you're doing is remarkable. You're a good father. And your daughter? She's lucky to have you." He looked at her for a long moment, unsure what to say. His mind raced through all the possibilities, all the pride, all the caution he had learned over the years. Accepting help had never been easy. Pride, responsibility, and fear of judgment made it complicated. But he also saw something in her eyes that felt sincere, respectful, and kind. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice low but steady. I appreciate that. Truly, it's just, life is hard, you know, and I try to do my best for her." "I know," she said softly, "and I think that's enough to show how much you love her. You don't have to do this alone. I can help in small ways, if you let me. Groceries, school supplies, anything you need to make life a little easier." He nodded slowly, considering her words. It wasn't easy for him to accept help, but something about her presence, her tone, and her honesty made it possible. "All right," he said finally. "If it's not too much trouble, that would help." "Thank you." She smiled, relieved. "It's no trouble at all. I just want to make things a little easier for you, not take anything away from you. You've been doing so much on your own. Maybe together we can make it a little lighter." He looked at her, a mixture of gratitude, caution, and hope in his eyes. For so long, he had carried the weight alone. And now, for the first time, someone had noticed not to judge, not to criticize, but simply to offer help. That small gesture, that recognition, felt more meaningful than he could put into words. They began to talk quietly about the little things she could help with. She didn't overwhelm him with suggestions or expectations. She offered small, practical support, a bag of groceries now and then, school supplies at the beginning of the term, small gestures that would not make him feel indebted, but supported. He listened carefully, asking questions, feeling the weight of kindness touch him gently. Over the next few weeks, she began leaving small packages at his door. Sometimes it was groceries, sometimes it was a few extra school supplies, and sometimes it was simple things she thought might make life easier, a notebook for his daughter, a small snack for him, a note of encouragement. Each time, he felt a mix of relief and gratitude. He never expected anyone to notice or care. But now, he realized that someone had. His daughter noticed too. She saw the small surprises appear, and she noticed how her father's eyes softened when he showed them to her. She didn't understand all the details, but she felt the warmth, the comfort, and the sense that they were not entirely alone. It made her feel safe in a way she couldn't describe, and it gave her father a quiet sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, he looked at his daughter and smiled. You know, he said softly, sometimes people notice the small things we do. And sometimes they want to help. It doesn't mean they think you can't do it yourself. It just means the world can be kind too. She nodded, understanding more than her years might suggest. Like the groceries? She asked. Exactly, he said. Like the groceries. The woman continued to check in, sometimes stopping by briefly to make sure they had what they needed, sometimes simply leaving a package at the door. She never overstepped, never intruded, but she always made her presence felt in a supportive, respectful way. Over time, the father began to relax. The weight he carried, though still heavy, felt lighter. He realized that kindness did not diminish his strength. It enhanced it. He also began to notice small changes in his daughter. She felt more confident going to school. She laughed more freely, asking questions, exploring ideas, and taking pride in her work. He knew that part of this growth came from his love, his careful attention, and the sacrifices he made. But he also realized that the support from someone who cared made life a little easier and gave him a chance to breathe. One afternoon, the woman stopped by, not with a package, but just to speak. She knocked lightly on the door, and he opened it. She smiled, and he nodded. I just wanted to see how things are going, she said. No groceries today, just to make sure you're okay. He smiled back, grateful for her thoughtfulness. We're managing, he said. Better than before. Your help has made a difference. It's good to hear that, she said softly. I'm glad I could do something. You deserve it. Both of you. They spoke for a few more minutes, quietly and comfortably. She left without fanfare, and he returned to his apartment, feeling a sense of gratitude he had never expected. It was not just about the groceries or supplies. It was about someone seeing him, acknowledging his struggle, and responding with kindness. That recognition was as important as any material help. He sat down at the kitchen table, looking around at the small apartment filled with quiet life, love, and laughter. He realized that even in hardship, life could hold moments of beauty, moments of kindness, and moments of connection that made all the struggle worthwhile. And somewhere, not far away, the woman reflected on the same truth. She thought about how easy it is to overlook small acts of courage, sacrifice, and love, and how powerful it is to simply notice and respond. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing she had done something meaningful, not just for them, but for herself. In the soft light of the afternoon. A story of quiet sacrifice, observation, and compassion continued to unfold, touching lives gently, profoundly, and in ways that would last far beyond the small acts themselves. Life continued in the small apartment, steady and familiar, yet something had shifted. The father still woke early, prepared meals, and guided his daughter through her day. He still worked long hours and stretched every dollar carefully. But now, there was a subtle comfort in the air, a feeling that they were not entirely alone, that someone cared enough to notice the quiet struggle behind ordinary life. His daughter had grown even more confident. She came home from school each day full of stories, laughter, and small achievements. Her backpack, once filled carefully each morning by her father, now contained little notes of encouragement she left for him. Drawings, small messages, and occasionally a pencil with her name decorated on it. He smiled at these small tokens, seeing them as tiny reflections of the love and care he gave her every day. The woman who had been quietly helping them continued to do so, always in a way that respected their dignity. She left groceries, school supplies, and small helpful items, always with a note that carried warmth but never overstepped. The father had learned to accept her gestures not as charity, but as kindness and acknowledgement that sometimes the world could offer support without demanding anything in return. That one weekend, she arrived at the apartment with a small bag of supplies for a weekend project. "I thought you might like to try this with her," she said, smiling gently. Inside were art materials, paints, brushes, paper, and simple instructions for a small craft project that the father hesitated for a moment. He had never considered such things necessary. Their lives were already full, already busy, already focused on survival. But he looked at her, then at the bag, then at his daughter, who was bouncing excitedly beside him. He realized that these small gestures were about more than supplies. They were about connection, creativity, and making life feel a little lighter. "Thank you," he said finally, carefully. "She'll love this." The woman smiled. "I thought she might." Sometimes the little things can make the biggest difference. They spent that afternoon together, father and daughter, working on the art project. The father helped his daughter mix paints, cut paper, and assemble the small crafts. She laughed, asked questions, and showed off her progress proudly. He guided her gently, offering encouragement, and occasionally joining in, letting himself enjoy the process. For the first time in a long while, he realized that life didn't always have to be about survival alone. Small joys, shared experiences, and acts of kindness could exist alongside responsibility. The apartment felt warmer that day, filled with laughter, creativity, and a sense of possibility that had been absent for too long. Later that evening, the woman returned briefly to check in. She didn't stay long, simply observed the father and daughter as they cleaned up the project and offered a few kind words. "You two make a good team," she said softly. "It's nice to see you enjoying something together." The father nodded, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and humility. "Yes," he said quietly, "it's been a long time since we've done something like this. Thank you for giving us the idea." She smiled and left, closing the door softly behind her. He stayed for a moment, looking at his daughter as she packed away the craft supplies. The room was small, the walls plain, the furniture modest, but it felt full of life and warmth. He realized then that life's beauty didn't depend on wealth or grandeur. It depended on love, care, and the small choices people made for each other. As the weeks passed, their routines continued, but the quiet presence of support began to weave itself naturally into their lives. Groceries arrived without fanfare, school supplies were replenished when needed, and small surprises kept the apartment filled with little bursts of joy. The father no longer felt the weight of responsibility alone. He had learned that accepting help didn't make him weak. It made the love he gave his daughter stronger, more sustainable. The daughter thrived in school. She brought home small awards, shared her homework with pride, and spoke excitedly about her friends and lessons. Her laughter filled the apartment more than it had before, and the father felt a deep, quiet satisfaction watching her grow. He thought about the sacrifices he had made, the meals he had skipped, and the careful choices he had made to ensure she felt loved and prepared. And he realized that every small sacrifice had been worth it, not just because of the results, but because of the bond it created between them. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, he noticed a small note on the table. It was from the woman, simple and heartfelt. "You're doing an amazing job. Keep going. You're not alone." He read it quietly, feeling a warmth spread through him. His daughter leaned over his shoulder, curious. "Who is it from?" she asked. He smiled. "Someone who cares," he said softly. "Someone who noticed what we do every day and wanted to remind us that we're not alone." The girl smiled, her eyes bright. "That's nice," she said. "We can be kind too, right?" "Yes," he said. "Exactly." That night, as he tucked his daughter into bed, he thought about the journey they had been on, the struggles, the small victories, the quiet determination, and now the gentle presence of kindness from someone who had simply noticed. He realized that life was made up of moments like these, small gestures, acts of love, and the quiet recognition of effort. He thought back to the day in the store, when he had carefully counted coins and chosen school supplies with precision. He thought about the sacrifices he had made, the skipped meals, and the careful planning. And now he saw that those moments had created more than just preparedness. They had created connections. They had created a life full of love, gratitude, and quiet hope. The woman continued to support them, but she also began to step back, letting the father and daughter take the lead in their lives. She never intruded, never imposed, but her presence remained a subtle thread of care and reassurance. The father had learned to accept help gracefully, and in doing so, he had shown his daughter the importance of community, kindness, and mutual support. One weekend, they invited her inside, not with groceries or supplies, but simply to share tea and conversation. The father felt a little nervous, unsure how to welcome someone who had helped so quietly for so long. But the woman's warm smile and gentle demeanor made it easy. They talked about small things, school projects, daily routines, and shared laughter. For the first time, the connection between them felt fully human, not just practical. It felt like friendship. The daughter, curious and playful, asked questions, shared stories, and laughed freely. She felt safe, happy, and loved. The father watched her, realizing that these moments, the simple, human moments of connection, were just as important as the sacrifices he had made. As the evening came to a close, the father reflected quietly. He had been alone for so long, carrying the weight of responsibility with silent determination. But now he understood something profound. Life was richer, more meaningful, and more joyful when people noticed each other, cared for each other, and acted with kindness. The journey of sacrifice and love had led them here, to a place where support, friendship, and quiet joy could exist alongside responsibility. The woman left that evening, smiling at the father and his daughter. They waved, feeling a sense of warmth and gratitude. The small apartment felt brighter, filled not just with love and laughter, but with the knowledge that kindness had a ripple effect. One small act could transform lives quietly, profoundly, and permanently. In the weeks that followed, life continued with its routines, challenges, and small triumphs. The father still worked hard, still made careful choices, and still sacrificed when necessary. But now he did not do so alone. The support he had received allowed him to breathe a little easier, to enjoy moments of joy with his daughter, and to recognize that love and responsibility were not burdens to carry alone. The daughter thrived in ways that went beyond schoolwork. She learned about kindness, gratitude, and resilience. She watched her father accept help gracefully, understanding that seeking and receiving support did not diminish strength or love. She learned that life could be difficult, but it could also be full of connection, joy, and subtle acts of compassion that transformed ordinary days into something extraordinary. One afternoon, as the father helped his daughter with a school project, he paused and looked at her thoughtfully. "You know," he said softly, "life is made up of small moments. Some of them are hard, some of them are joyful, and some are just quiet. But every single one matters. And sometimes the kindness of others can make a big difference." She nodded, understanding more than she could express. "Like when the lady helped us?" she asked. "Exactly," he said, smiling. "Exactly." In that quiet, ordinary apartment, surrounded by simple furniture, laughter, and the evidence of a life built carefully and lovingly, the father felt a deep sense of peace. The struggles were still there, the responsibilities still pressing, but now they were tempered by connection, kindness, and a shared understanding that no one needed to face life entirely alone. The woman continued her quiet support, sometimes leaving supplies, sometimes offering advice, and sometimes simply checking in. She never demanded attention, never imposed herself, but her presence had become a gentle, stabilizing force in their lives. The father no longer felt the need to hide his struggles, and his daughter learned that life was not only about what you carried, but about how you shared it and how you allowed others to help. Years later, the father would look back on those days, the skipped meals, the careful counting of coins, the walks to the store, and see them not only as challenges, but as the foundation for a deeper understanding of love and resilience. The woman's quiet interventions, the unexpected kindness, and the subtle encouragements had become threads woven into the fabric of their lives. Threads that reminded them both that humanity is at its best when people notice, care, and act with compassion. In the end, life in the small apartment was not just about survival. It was about love, hope, and the quiet triumph of ordinary people doing extraordinary things for each other. It was about a father and his daughter growing together, learning together, and living together in a world that sometimes overlooked the small gestures, but could never erase their meaning. And it was about someone who noticed, a woman who chose to follow a small act of courage, to observe quietly, and to act in kindness without fanfare or expectation. Her presence reminded them that the world could be gentle, attentive, and supportive. She showed them that sometimes noticing is the first step toward change, and small acts can create ripples that last a lifetime. In that way, life went on, filled with quiet moments, small victories, acts of love, and the enduring proof that kindness, when offered and accepted, can transform lives forever.